It's good to have you here with us. Big welcome back. It's HPR, All Things Considered. I'm Dave Lawrence. Mahalo for joining us. Very special time. Grateful to be welcoming back a band that are going to be in the beginning of next year, but it's perfect around the holidays. Tickets just went on sale for Tower of Power. They're going to be Thursday and Friday, February 19th and 20th. Blue Note Hawaii, 6:30 and 9 each of those nights. Then they're also going to be Saturday, February 21st, returning to the Valley Isle at the Mac. And Sax Magician, one of the soulful voices and cats from Tower of Power, just a thrill to welcome back. I don't know how many times we've had him on the show. That's why I thought around the holidays it can't get better than having Emilio Castillo back on. Thank you so much, my brother.
You're welcome, Dave. Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure to have you again. And this is one of those special places for TOP, no question. And one of the things that I guess I look at your website, 57 years of funk and soul. That's a bit daunting to look at because anyone puts their own lifespan, I guess, up against the lifespan of the band. How do you celebrate something like that? Give yourselves like a round of what's going to be in store when you have that going on.
Well, I mean, people say, that's amazing. I say, it's more amazing to me. You know, I people used to say, did you have any idea when you were 17 years old that, you'd be together this long or you go as far as you went throughout the world? And I say, at 17, my idols was a band called the Spiders, and they got a gig in Sacramento at a nightclub in Sacramento. And I thought, man, if I could just get to Sacramento,
Yeah,
that was the extent of my vision at that point.
I love it. If I could just get to Sacramento. And so when you were last on, I remember there was you had a couple of new cats that had come to the party. Give the members a plug, as for the folks who are getting to enjoy this trip to the islands for TOP.
Well, we have a hot new drummer. David Garibaldi has retired as of a little over a year ago, and almost 2 years now.
Right.
And we have Peter Antunes playing drums. Really, really great musician, great guy. Just fits in perfect Tower Power style. He's got all the chops, got the groove, he's got the young energy, and we just love him. And then we also have a really hot trumpet trombone player
Huh?
named Dave Richards, and he's like Mick Gillette. He's got that super high range, plays really perfectly in tune, and then puts it down and picks up the trombone and just wails on the trombone. And we get to the right out, he goes to the trumpet again, takes it up an octave. He's just amazing, and we're just loving him. Of course, we still have Adolfo Acosta on trumpet, and we borrowed him over 25 years ago from Maynard Ferguson Band.
Wow.
I always tell people at all the gigs, we borrowed him from the Maynard Ferguson Band over 25 years ago and just never gave him
Right.
back.
That's a hell of a time there. It's a nice rental.
And then we have on organ now. I had a singer for a while named Mike Jarrell,
Yeah.
great singer that I got. He was a finalist on The Voice. And he came in the band for a while, and then he had some problems with his voice, and we had to sort of go our separate ways. But I remember when I told him, I was going to look for another singer, I said, Roger keeps threatening to retire. That was our organist at the time. And I said, when he does, I think you could do the keyboard gig because he's a really great keyboardist.
Ah.
And I said, would you be interested in doing that? He goes, yes. As quickly as he could, he said yes. And then we kept in touch for like over a year. And he just called me up, how's it going? I go, well, things are going good. He hasn't said anything lately. I go, but you still looking at the material? He goes, yeah, I'm ready. And then Roger finally said he was going to finish up last year. And
Wow.
we brought Mike Jarrell in on the Hammond B3 and on the synthesizers, and he's got a great voice. So now the background vocals are really superb, and really a killer B3 player and a great young guy, Christian guy. We just love him. So that's a great new addition for me.
And the main vocals that people hear, just
Yeah, we we got this young kid out of Toronto, Canada, named Jordan John.
yeah, that's it. Right.
Now, Jordan is the son of a very famous bass player named Prakash John. And he's had a soul band in Toronto for maybe not 57 years, but probably at least 50,
That y'all
because
jammed with many years
we
ago.
used to play with them in Toronto. I
Right.
mean, we would go sit in because we were doing some recording up there back in the early 70s. I guess it was mid 70s. And they had a great band, and we would go and sit in, and we knew his dad, and his father also owned a recording studio.
Huh?
There was a girl at the studio, and Doc fell in love with her. So, he was her boss, and
Whoa.
Doc knew him really well. And so all these years later, I'm looking for a singer and I can't find one. I mean, I'm really hard pressed. I got like 13 days before the next gig. I got to get a singer, and it was something I never do. I said, put it out all over the internet. If you think you could sing with Tower Power, send me a video, send your bio, etc. And I got a bunch of replies, and there was one really good singer that he had opened for the Stones, but he was more of a rock guy. And then Jordan had submitted something, and for some reason I got his name and the other guy's video mixed up. And meanwhile, my business manager, Diane, she said, "Have you checked this guy out, Jordan John?" And I go, "Yeah, yeah, he opened for the Stones. Yeah, I think he's too rock though." But I was looking at the other guy's video. So then I'm really getting down to it, and she keeps on going, "Are you sure? Have you checked this guy, Jordan John?" And so finally I go back and I check it. Oh man, I've been looking at the wrong guy. And I see him there, and he's singing with the Lincolns. And
Ah.
right behind him is his dad, Prakash John. Prakash went on to play with Alice Cooper, The Temptations, George Clinton. He's a famous musician. So man, he starts singing soul music. I mean, he's doing James Brown with the Lincolns. He sang Do Right Woman by Aretha Franklin. I was stunned. And while I'm listening, my wife is sitting over here next to me, and she goes, "Who's that?" I go, "It's this young kid from Toronto." She goes, "Man, he sounds great." I go, "Yeah, look at him." And I show her, she goes, "Well, everybody's going to leave their husbands for this guy."
Oh.
He's devilishly handsome and tall, just a winner in every respect. So we happen to be playing in Niagara Falls in the following week. And I call him up and I said, I'm interested. I saw your video. Would you like to audition? Absolutely. I go, okay. I go, we're playing in Niagara Falls. Could you get there to the sound check? He says, yeah, that's not far from me at all. He came over, he sang about 6 songs, and I did something I never do. I always consult with the band, you know, but I just turned around, I looked at them, and they all looked at me. And I go to Jordan, I go, we'd like to move forward with you. And he goes, what? I go, we'd like to move forward with you. He goes, are you kidding me?
No.
No. And he says, this is life changing. And he grabs me and he's hugging me. And we actually had him sing that
Oh,
night.
wow.
He sang So Very Hard to Go that night.
Just as a guest spot on the one jam.
Yeah, one song. Yeah.
Right.
Crowd loved him immediately. We knew we had a winner. And then I gave him a whole bunch of tapes and recordings. I said, be ready, live show in a couple of weeks. And he showed up and killed it.
I like the insight, just the general insight into how one of those rehearsals goes. I love the line, we'd like to move forward with you. That's such a
Yeah.
great line. And you've probably said that a few times over the years.
Yeah, more than a few. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because you're the guy who runs the show for This Guy Runs Tower of Power that you're listening to. So you're really getting some insight into just how bands do some of that stuff. Well, how cool. And what a family connection. Perfect for our holidays, like I was saying. I knew that you'd have the right kind of juice and it brings that thing full circle for you to have the connection with his pop and when you do your set, how much input? That's another great lead in. Do these guys have? Is it something that you have constructed a really masterful thing that works each night, or do you kind of sit there together? What's the story with the set folks will be hearing at these shows locally?
In terms of choosing the set,
Yeah.
yeah, I usually write out a set. If anybody's got any problems with it, they can let me know and we'll make a change. Or, a lot of times the guys are getting bored during certain songs and we got a lot of songs that we know. I say, let's do this one. I'll say, yeah, all right, I'll put it in. We recently, a bunch of us got bronchitis really bad, and Jordan also did. And so he had to go see a vocal surgeon. And they wanted him to, at first we thought he was going to have a procedure, but it turned out he didn't have to. They put him on some special antibiotics. I remember I was on three different antibiotics over a period of a month,
Wow.
some really bad bug. But anyway, we had to adjust the set for him. I sang two songs and we did an instrumental. And then I had Mike Jarrell sing, To Say the Least You're the Most, the Johnny Watson tune. So, we make adjustments. It just depends on what's going on. Right now, we're at full strength again. So we're getting ready to leave day after Thanksgiving. We'll do 22 days Christmas tour featuring six songs from our Christmas album that we put out a year before last. And everybody's at full strength now. So hopefully no more bronchial infections.
No, I love that kind of talk. I'm my fingers crossed, my brother, out here. I was thinking about some of the other things in your life when I was looking back over some really interesting, unusual sort of gigs. And you'll tell me if maybe you don't remember all of these, but some of these really struck me. And again, we're talking with one of the best storytellers we got, Tower of Powers, Emilio Castillo, coming back for a celebration of 57 years of funk and soul. Thursday and Friday, February 19th and 20th, Blue Note Hawaii, 6:30 and 9 each night. And Valley Isle folks hitting the MAC Saturday, February 21st. Now, it was over 50 years ago. Now, it looked like a wild bill. And again, if you don't remember it, I have a bunch of these. But it was January 7th, 1975, it says on the poster, a place called Eden Hall in Amsterdam. And at the top of the bill was Little Feat. In the middle of the bill was Montrose. And the opening act was Tower of Power. Do you remember any of this?
I remember very well, yeah,
Oh,
because we did, I think it was 32 dates, 32 or 36 dates all over Europe with six Warner Brothers acts. So it was Little Feat, Montrose, and us, Graham Central Station, the Doobie Brothers, and they had a protege band called Kimberly. And each night, that was the bill. It was us and Little Feat and Montrose, and the other night was Graham Central Station, the Doobies, and Kimberly. And I remember playing Amsterdam very well. I mean, everybody loved Amsterdam, And but yeah, we went all over Europe with those guys. And Sammy Hagar was the singer for Montrose.
right.
And I got to know Lowell George really well. We had already played on their record. We had done Spanish Moon for them, and I think we might have done High Roller by then. I'm not sure, but I know we did Spanish Moon by then. So, we had a respect for each other, and we were like-minded. So personality-wise, party-wise, everybody was crazy back then, and so a lot of partying, and they were like us, So we did a lot of hanging out. I got very close with Richie Hayward, the drummer.
Right.
Uh, Ronnie Montrose was a real gentleman. I remember we'd be on the plane, and he'd come on the plane, and he'd have this big model airplane, like with balsa wood. It's like he worked on that model airplane the whole tour, and him getting on the plane, and I guess they chartered us a big jet. So all the bands were on there, but he had to be really careful putting his plane in the overhead bin, and it was a fun tour, man. We had a great time.
What a great memory. And that's cool you mentioned the Spanish Moon with Little Feat, because if folks have Waiting for Columbus, I guess, is the record where Lowell famously says, Tower Power Horns, right? During that epic version of that tune on there.
Yeah, well, by that point, we had played on a few of their albums by the
Yeah,
time we were Waiting for Columbus, and they just loved it when the horns played with them, And so they said, we want to do a live recording, and they brought us out. I'm trying to
DC?
remember.
Is
We
that where it
we
was?
we recorded in DC live, but I think the rehearsals were in LA.
Okay.
And but man, Greg Adams wrote some great arrangements and live arrangements, not just the ones we did on the record.
Right.
So they were really good. And then we did Washington, D.C., I think at least two nights, maybe three. And that was their turf. They were, for some reason, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., that area right there, they loved Little Feat. And we got over really good there. But then we went to London and played the Rainbow Theater. And I remember we had a particular night. we had played, I guess it was one or two nights, and some of the guys stayed up and partied. Nick Gillette and Paul Barrere and Richie Hayward, and I guess Paul had gotten really, out of it and sort of passed out, and he didn't have any shoes on. And some of the guys put a bunch of matches in his toes and gave him a hot foot. They lit him on fire. They're telling me this the next day. I'm like, I couldn't believe it. But he showed up to play, and he was really, really not doing well at all. And they turned his amp off. That's how not well he was doing.
Wow.
And we're playing the gig, and I remember also right before we went on the stage, Richie Hayward and Lowell George had a huge fight, and uh, and Richie Hayward turned around and Lowell George hit him in the back, right in
Whoa.
the middle of his back. And Richie Hayward turned around, he was going to kill him. And I had a tour manager back then from Hawaii, Doug Kim San. And this guy was a Hawaiian bone breaker guy. He was a famous guy in rock and roll. He was with us for many years. But anyway, he got in between the two of them. But that's how we all walked on stage. Those guys, angry as all can be. Paul's completely out of it. And during the whole show, Paul, because they got his amp off, and he's like, and he kept going around and turning the amp up, and the roadie kept coming out. He'd turn it up and turn it around, and the roadie would turn it back off. And come to find out, they call that Black Wednesday. And come to find out, they used Black Wednesday for the record for
Oh,
Waiting for Columbus. Yeah, because Richie was so angry at Lowell, and they were both playing, fierce, The groove was so killing. Lowell George was killing it. Kenny Grant, everybody was digging in, because emotions were high,
right.
The horns killed it. And I get more questions and compliments about Waiting for Columbus because right then when that record came out, they were on the cover of People magazine. That was really like
Their
their
peak.
heyday,
Yeah. Right.
big thing in their career. And a lot of fun. I remember Keith Richards and Elton John came out to London, and it was exciting.
Yeah, because they had that buzz. You're right. Like everybody wanted to come take a check out of what they were up to.
Yes, yes, they had a thing. And we used to tell them, because their thing was kind of like we called it slow funk. We used to say, "You're the masters of slow funk, and we're the masters of fast funk."
No, it's a great combo. And those are, I mean, that's what I meant about this guy. He just blows your mind with stories. All right, just one last one, and I will not pester you with another one. I'll save the rest of these. I got a big pile of them. And this may not yield anything. Maybe the show didn't happen. It may be one of these, because sometimes things get canceled and the poster still looks cool. This one said, this is a pretty heavy one. June 5th, 1978, at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. It said, Bob Marley, Tower of Power, and the Imperials.
I don't remember that show in Philly, but we did maybe because we didn't play a lot of dates with Bob Marley. But the one I remember,
Yeah, any
we
venue.
did, we did in Toronto, and it was probably the next day.
Okay, so
Uh,
same year, though, and everything.
oh yeah, because we only played with them maybe two or three dates during that one time and never again. And I didn't know much about Bob Marley. I always had blinders on. I was about soul music and reggae. I was like, reggae, Bob Marley, who, whatever. But he was huge. And so I remember being in Toronto, walking out to the stage, it's like this huge mega dome, and it's filled with Bob Marley fans. I was like, whoa, man. And Bob Marley had this kind of looked like a mob guy. He was obviously Jamaican, but he was dressed, in a real dark suit and had a very dark demeanor. And he was walking Bob out to the stage, and we were all looking at him. It was
Wow.
an interesting scene.
That's a real insight. See, you always give the candid thing, and I've never even heard stuff. So it's like a security kind of cat, you're saying, and super, super well
I think
dressed.
he was the man. He was the manager, I believe.
Or manager, but very, very well dressed and heavy looking cat with
Yeah, it
with
looked like a mob guy,
oh, I have no doubt.
except for Jamaican.
With dreads kind of or something or
No dreads.
no
No,
dreads.
he had He had a real nice coif. He was
Gotcha.
like, all those guys are all dreaded out and, reggaeed out. But he was like, laid back and
Like the business guy from to take. And you didn't get any close time with Bob, it sounds like, because of what you
no,
say.
no, no.
And I remember we just lost Jimmy Cliff, and I remember we had talked about that show you had done with Jimmy Cliff because I read off the whole thing, and I remember your reaction because you were like, "Where do you come up with this stuff, Dave?" Because it was like some obscure show, and you hadn't had any interaction with Jimmy at that either,
No, I wish I did. He
right?
was so great.
But see, I already see. I listen when you tell your stories because I knew. Well, he's not going to have a Jimmy Cliff story. As amazing as Jimmy was, they played together, and this is proof. You just sometimes you can't remember all the stuff. And the name, as I go to close it out with you, I've been listening to Dexter Gordon a lot recently, and I've been checking out the Tower of Power, his 1969 record, and I just had to ask before I let you go that you had started in '68 as like the Motowns or whatever. Did his name of that record have anything to do, or is that just a coincidence that y'all had the same?
Total
Yep,
coincidence.
that makes sense. Totally
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
was looking for one of those psychedelic names. We were called the
Yeah,
Motowns.
I remember.
Because my brother Jack and me were from Detroit. We moved to the Bay Area when we were 11 and 12. And then, after we got into music, we started to play soul music. And my mother said, if you're going to play soul music, you should call yourselves the Motowns because you're from Detroit. So that's what we were. Then I met Doc, and he was the first hippie we ever met. And he knew the loading zone. He was their roadie for the loading zone. And, everybody's dressed, with bell bottoms and growing their hair long. And we were still wearing suits. We were like these little vatos in the East Bay. And so we decided, man, we got to get into the Fillmore. And we knew we'd never get in being called the Motown. So I was looking for one of those weird names like Lothar and the Hand People or, Frumious Bandersnatch. They had all these weird names. And I was at this recording studio and there was a list, actually 3 pages long, both sides, all weird band names, like Strawberry Alarm Clock, all that kind of weird psychedelic name. And I'm looking at them and going, none of, we're a soul band. None of this describes us. And then I saw Tower of Power, and I don't know, man, for some reason it caught my eye. It was the only name really that caught my eye from the list. And I walked out, I go, hey, what about Tower of Power? And they're like, yeah, yeah, that's us.
And where was this list again?
We were recording in Hayward, California at this little recording studio. What was the name of that? Baytown Records. And the owner had an office next door, and we were on a break. And I was in his office, sitting at his desk. And I looked down, just what I needed, a big long list of all kind of weird psychedelic names. And so I started looking through them, and Tower of Power, man. I kind of regret picking that name. I don't know. To me, it sounds like braggadocio or something. I don't know. I don't know. But there's no changing it now after
Yeah.
57 years.
It's a little late, I was going to say, to be changing it, especially with the big shows coming up early in the year next year. Thursday and Friday, February 19th and 20th, Blue Note Hawaii, 6:30 and 9 each night. And Saturday, February the 21st at the MAC, returning to the Valley Isle. And a name so many people in Hawaii have grown up with, Emilio. Tower of Power's legendary sax man. He's kept the band rolling and well-oiled and grooving all these years, Emilio Castillo, and he's been on the show countless times, telling us great stories. Perfect around the holidays. Bring everyone to, holiday. I don't got to tell you that talk story is a big thing here. You know that. So you're really high fives, my brother, for coming through with something that the folks here in the islands can definitely relate to.
Well, McKenna Maduli's got that show, Talk Story,
Right.
and she just lost her mother. Actually, I was there when she passed. I'm good friends with Kata Maduli, and they just did a show on Talk Story. She had her dad on Kata, and
Uh,
they saluted Janet. But hey, before we go, I wanted to plug my Christmas record.
yeah, please.
Yeah, because you're playing this at the holidays, man.
Yes, yes.
We did the greatest Christmas record, man. I didn't even want to do it. I wanted to record another record. And my manager goes, "Nope, you're doing a Christmas record." I'm like, "I don't want to do a Christmas record." He's like, "You're doing one, and you're going to thank me for the rest of your life. It's the gift that keeps on giving." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And we started to record it, and man, it turned out great. I just love it. So it's called "It's Christmas" by Tower of Power, and really great.
And you're going to be featuring some of that at the show, or will be past by that point? How do you do stuff like
Yeah,
that? It's hard
yeah,
to
we'll
do.
be fast. We do the Christmas tour from, right after Thanksgiving all the way up to Christmas Eve, and then we're done.
Right. Well, people can enjoy it now, and then when the show comes, they enjoy that. It's a little twofer, two separate, two scoops,
A twofer.
and two different flavors. I like it a lot, my brother. I hope you had fun. It's always fun to have you on here, man. It makes me feel
Every
good.
time, Dave. Every time.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. You travel safe. You're always out there moving around. Watch your step when you're walking and stuff. It's difficult. One false step and everything changes. So walk carefully and take good care of yourself. Thank you again.
Amen. God bless you. Bye-bye.
God bless you.